Welcome to Down the Garden Path. I'm your host, Joanne Shaw, landscape designer and plant lover. I enjoy discussing down to earth tips and advice to help you seasonally manage your garden and landscape. And I also aim to bring you interesting and relevant topics to educate you all about the landscaping and horticultural industry. Welcome to another episode of Houseplant Chat with me, Joanne Shaw, and Down the Garden Path podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the other episodes. And today I wanted to talk about fertilizing. So it's coming up to the time that we need to start fertilizing, or we should. It is recommended to start fertilizing our houseplants. Not quite yet. We do want to wait until the days start to get a bit longer, probably around after daylight savings times, when the days start to get a little bit longer and your plants are going to start waking up. It is a really good time to start fertilizing your houseplants. One of the things I want to talk about was the different types of fertilizer that you can use. So first of all, fertilizer has ratios, chemical ratios, very similar to our outdoor plants. You're often when you're watering your plants outside, there might be a 20-20-20, or even when you do lawn fertilizers, you're going to look at those numbers, right? So it's NPK, so nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are those three numbers. And some plants, that have really big leaves, like a ficus, like a fiddly fig, may need more nitrogen. And some of the smaller, finer plants might need a little bit less nitrogen or more of an evenly 10-10-10, an evenly strength fertilizer. So that's something to look for. So you want to look for, I think, what they would term an all-purpose fertilizer. But those fertilizers come in varieties of different ways, and whatever is easier for you to apply. So first of all, the most common, well, I think they're all common, but the most common and maybe the easier is water-soluble. So you've got a bottle of liquid, and it either comes with a little dropper or a little cup, and you would dilute that amount in depending on the size of your watering can, and then proceed to water your houseplants that way. So that way you are, it's fairly easy to apply, and it's not an extra step. You're doing it at the same time as you're watering. Well, you're doing them all at the same time as you're watering. So that is the first type, is a quality liquid fertilizer. You can also, if you have a lot of plants, and you may want to choose something like a granular, which you can buy in bulk. So a granular fertilizer, so you'll sprinkle the fertilizer on the surface of the soil in your containers. And then when you water the plant, the granulars will start to slowly dissolve over time, and it would start feeding your plants. Now, my hesitation with that variety is that, I don't think you have any control over how much they're getting. It seems a little bit loose and not very precise. Not that all of them are very precise, but I feel like this is the one where you really don't have control, and you might have a small plant container, but it's a heavier feeder type of plant. And so I think it's a little bit harder to modify according to what your plant requires. But that's just, my 2 cents. And the third kind is similar. It's a granular, or it's little pellets or little balls, and it's a slow release fertilizer. So it won't dissolve in the 1 or 2 waterings. It's going to dissolve much slower. So you will not need to water as often. So if we go back to the liquid fertilizer, because it is, because it's a liquid fertilizer and it's going right immediately into your plant's roots, and then the plants are going to absorb it and the soil is going to deal with it. You may need to fertilize more often. So every other week or every other month or every other watering, that type of thing, you're going to need to water more often, depending on your plant variety. Granular fertilizer, you may only need to do it monthly, but or less, or even every other month. But I still think you need to really know, especially if you've got a high needs plant like a fiddle fig or something like that, you need to know which of your plants are higher needs and which might need a little bit more fertilizer. For the slow release fertilizers, because they are slow and they are slowly dissolving and they don't dissolve right away when you start watering, you might not only need to do it every 3 months or so. So that's so there's upsides on all three options, and I think it's really important to um, know that you need to follow the package directions. So I think it's doing a little bit of research on your part as to which of your plants, let's say you might have a plant or two that are heavier feeders. Otherwise, most plants, I did pop in and kind of some of the common ones like ficus, like a fiddle leaf or ficus. There's a few varieties of ficus, like a spider plant, that type of thing, pathos, and they all seem to be happy with more of a balanced 10-10-10 or 20-20-20. In the spring, when we first water it, the first few start watering them, the first few waterings should really be at half strength because we want to ease them into it. They're just waking up as, again, the days are longer, the temperatures are changing. Even though the temperature is changing or outside, they still, it still kind of relates to the plants. So that's something to think about. Um, and there are many varieties to choose from when it comes to and different manufacturers and that type of thing. So I personally think it's best to look for an organic fertilizer that still will have the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium numbers on it. They may be lower. It might be more like the plant food from our friends at Bios Nutrients 411. So it's a much lower number, but it's an organic fertilizer. And I like the idea of it being local and a smaller brand as opposed to, the big box, mass produced type of plant food. But you do you. I mean, you may already have some in the cupboard that you have forgotten about. Check the expiry date in case it's expired, which it's not going to be harmful. It just might be a little bit less effective. So that's something. So you don't necessarily have to throw it away, but you need to mitigate for the expiration type of thing. So I also have a few other tips. One, of course, follow the instructions on the package, whichever one you decide to choose, whether it's the slow release, the liquid fertilizer. Sometimes I feel like the slow release one, because you'll have to do it so infrequently that I think you might forget, whereas, at least if it becomes rote that, like from mid-March until the end of August, you need to apply the liquid fertilizer in your water. So I don't know. It just really depends on how you manage it that way. Remember, half strength the first few times in the beginning of the season. And I do think it's important to research some of your plants and spot check a few of them and just see what are their requirements in case they are a heavier feeder or they don't require as much. That could be an option as well, especially if you have those sentimental plants like grandma's cuttings or a plant from grandma's Christmas cactus or a special orchid that you paid a fortune for impulse purchase. I've done that. I know. I'm sure there's other people out there who've done that. That type of thing. Or if my rubber tree plant's kind of a sentimental plant at my house that I've had it. My mom gave it to me when we first got married, and so I've had the same fig rubber tree plant for 36 years. So, I don't want anything happening to it. So if you have those sentimental type plants, then definitely research what their specific needs are and whether they need, whether 20-20-20 is enough or whether they're a heavier feeder and need something a little bit more. Flowering plants might need a little bit more of the phosphorus. That's the flowering. So it's usually the middle number, which also applies to your outside plants. If you have something that's not flowering, then you want something that's more like a 10-50-10 or 20-50-20 so that you have the high middle number that encourages flowering. And there are, I know when you start looking up fertilizers, you're going to find that there's lots of, homemade recipes out there, some with tea, some with coffee grounds, some with fish emulsion, that type of thing. If you do have one that you swear by, I would love to hear about it. And I would love to know, how you've been successful with it. But for the most part, I think it is best, especially if you're new to houseplants, to stick with something that the numbers, whether it's a 10 10 10 or a 20 20 20, or again, flowering, you want the high middle number. So, but I'm always curious about homemade things, and to see how you're making out with that, and if it's something that you found to be very successful. I'd love to hear about it. So reach out to me on socials, or respond to the podcast in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you. So I hope this gives you some tips on fertilizing. I hope I made it as simple as possible. I personally like the water soluble, so that's what I'm going to use. And I'm going to actually use this one, which it's organic, and because of how stinky it is, it's actually very stinky, but it has quality product, and I love that it's locally to the GTA. And a small company. So I kind of love that. And so I'm looking forward to getting going with our house plants. And I have to plant some of that from our past plant chats. I have to pot up some of my cuttings. They're rooting really well in water, and I'm hoping to do that when the temperatures warm up a little bit, and my soil outside can warm up as well. So thanks for listening. I hope these tips help. I love to hear your feedback and just success stories, and any other concerns you may have, or any other suggestions you have for my houseplant chat. Bye for now.